and in the 60s and 70s was the phenomena for change in Western countries. We really didn't know what to expect because as young people at that time, we were supporting all liberation movements. For us, when somebody says, I'm fighting for liberation, we take them as that. So our job was advocacy and ensuring that the societies we were in at that time understood what the message was about. When the chairman came, he just uplifted the entire solidarity movement because he connected us, as Mwalimu Julius Nyerere had intended, with the Liberation Centre. And my husband and I were very lucky to be invited after those tours to Tanzania to meet all the solidarity movements. Those movements have never disbanded or got disorganized. They are still there, but we are all, I'm now 80, my next birthday I'll be 81. And my Dr. Meredith Bergman, she's now been a speaker of the upper house, she's done all those things, but the guiding principles we received at that time still guide us today. We are very excited that Peter Murphy, who to us would be an administrator of the Zimbabwe Information Centre, which is 22 years old this year, and Graham Chuck, who is an optometrist, but is a committee member of the Zimbabwe Information Centre in Sydney, Australia. This is a regular touch base, which they do. They come regularly, especially since my torture, to see that I'm not going to be tortured again. And I assure them that I'm home. No one is going to torture me. And if they do, those are the consequences of being in the struggle in any country where you are. So they've been here to see how the outcome of the elections were. Last year they were here at exactly the time when the president declared the Reverend Ndabanini Stole a national hero. So they're just here to assess again what has happened. We have Dr. Lamiel Piri, the chair of Nango, and Joy. Joy, sorry to just say Joy. Joy who? Joy Bere, who is from Nango, who's been in Nango as long as I can remember. We have a Zimbabwe Peace Building Initiative network team, which is a network of networks to bring a new culture in civil society, which is, if you're in civil society, you only have 3 tasks to do. The first one is to fill in the gaps where government can't reach in terms of policy and what you're doing. Number 2, agenda setting. Take the best practices from everywhere. Number 3, it is to really ensure that we get the message right, that we are one society. So Dr. Piri and Joy, we went to see their projects, and that's something they mentioned, and we thought it was important for them to be here. But really, this is the function of Chris Chivinge, who has qualitatively improved our message to Zimbabweans with his approach to media and the message. So I'd like now to introduce Peter, who for me is just one of the young boys I've known most of my life, and Chuck, and to say to both of you, this is the media in Zimbabwe, and if you could address us.
Okay. On behalf of Graham and I want to thank you all for coming to the media conference. We've been in Zimbabwe for nearly 2 weeks, and we definitely decided not to come during the elections, and we were hoping that everything would be settled, but that's obviously not what happened. So the first thing I'd like to do on behalf of Graham and I and the Zimbabwe Information Centre is really to congratulate the people of Zimbabwe for conducting a peaceful election. In a way, it doesn't matter to us exactly who won or lost the election. The very fact that the election was peaceful is a big step forward and an achievement looking back over the last 23 years in which we've been engaged. So We also want to acknowledge the statement and congratulate the President, Mnangagwa, for saying that the future is about peace, harmony, love and development. It's like a PR slogan a little bit, but really it's the message of the international community encapsulating in a way the Sustainable Development Goals for 2030, which is an effort by, I think, the President to link Zimbabwe and its aspirations to the whole world. Zimbabwe is part of the international community. It should not be isolated. So as part of what we're doing here, in fact, the main thing we wanted to come here to say was that in Australia, the Zimbabwe Information Centre has launched a campaign for the cancellation of the remaining sanctions that Australia has against individuals and entities here in Zimbabwe. These arose from 2002. They're completely out of date. They're misapplied, and they've had, along with those done by the United States, the UK and European Union, these sanctions, they're not smart, they're not targeted, they're just really crushing this whole society. The people of Zimbabwe as a whole are suffering, and of course they were not the target at all if there was a clear target. So we want to let you know that, and we also really feel strongly about this 50th anniversary of Herbert Chitepo's visit. So, you know, it's hard to convey to you. I think in Australia in 1973, to have a visit like that from a liberation struggle leader from Africa was sensational. And what Herbert was able to do in talking to people just like me, all up and down the coastline of Australia, was to shift the government of Australia and commit Australia to support the liberation struggles here in Zimbabwe, also in South Africa and Namibia, and in Mozambique and Angola. The United States was horrified, but it was the right thing to do, and it's one of the reasons why we exist today, that we are part of the struggle. There's been some good consequences, of course, and some bad consequences in this long period, and we want to walk with the people of Zimbabwe all the way. We're not going to just be some kind of political butterfly and flit off somewhere else. We're here to stay. So there's a story I could say about the visits we've made as ZIC. So myself, I came here in 2000 for the first Congress of MDC at the Chitungwiza Aquatic Centre. It was a very energised event. The movement or the hopes of the people for democratic change were so palpable, and there's such a high expectation of change. And I myself, of course, recognise this as part of the vision, the hopes and desires that were expressed in the liberation struggle. And then we came back in 2009, so it seems a long time, but in between there, you will remember there was an absolutely torrid situation in the country. There was enormous violence and setbacks, and there was an intense struggle. So we were very much connected to all of that. And in 2009, we were just before the formation of the Government of National Unity, which was again a really terrific relief. I'm sure the people of Zimbabwe were very, very happy to see that happening. And Mrs. Holland became a senator and was a minister. So it was a time again of great hope. Things continued on. We came back in 2017 just when Emerson Mnangagwa had to flee the country, and so there was another crisis. But we were really relieved a few weeks later when President Mugabe was deposed, and I think the whole country had a sense of relief and joy that the pressure was off. Now, it's not like a miracle. Everything's still difficult, very, very difficult. But again, I think we're seeing steps forward for the hopes of the people for democracy and prosperity and peace. So coming back to the election, in 2018 we were here, and 2018, but at that election it was again a big step forward, but it was very much marred by violence at the end. And this, in a way, I think was deliberate spoiling of the achievement of the people in that process. And so I'm very happy that in 2023 we can really say we've had a straightforward election. There is a result which has to be respected by the international community, and let's hope that the country can go forward, and ZIC will be doing its best to contribute to that. And I know that there's a campaign on to discredit the election entirely, and we will definitely be doing our best to neutralise that, because the facts don't add up to that story as far as we can tell. So the story about the sanctions then fits into that as part of our effort to say the truth about what's going on with Zimbabwe to the international community, and especially to the Australian government. You know, we can really say these sanctions are wrong now. Whatever you thought they were doing before, they're wrong now. Let's stop them. And we think that Australia is of sufficient position in the world that the US and UK and EU will listen to that. And so hopefully there's a significant improvement can come from that. Lastly, I'd just like to say we were able to visit the Rugare community on the weekend here in Harare, and also the Kuwadzana Peace Village project and school. We visited there last year as well, and we just again I'd like to emphasise that we're seeing at the community level collective efforts of people with very few resources. They're very determined to improve their lives and not wait around for someone to come and save them, and they're also doing it in the sense of respect, peace, equality, and these again are the deep values that are Zimbabwean, but they're universal human values which can be uniting all of us in the efforts we have to continue to make to make sure our society has a future, and our children and their children have a future. I can say we're focused on Zimbabwe, but if you look around the world, it's a very troubled world today. All of us, by doing these sort of actions, can change the world for the better. So I think I'll leave it there, and we're happy to take any questions. Quite sympathetic to what we're doing, and we think we can convince the Foreign Minister to do this.
What is required here in Zimbabwe, and we are going to do that through the networks. The sanctions affect Zimbabweans as a society. People may not realize that, but it does. My husband works with IT. When he tries to link in internationally to buy equipment, he is told, we don't deal with Zimbabwe. Many things are like that, which we don't see. So we are going to be, since the elections are over, through our networks, through the traditional leaders, through everybody, we are going to get signatures to support that we don't want sanctions anymore. I'm traveling to Australia also to celebrate the 50th year of the coming of the chair there, and I'm taking those with me. They were the youngsters. So they hope that their campaign, as the Chitepo one was 50 years ago, will actually influence other Western countries, because the Chitepo visit actually influenced all Western countries with the message that he took there and the changes which took place.
Yes, Peter. Long ago we asked for the sanctions alongside people here in Zimbabwe, but that was 20 years ago. So yes, we've gone to the people in the Department of Foreign Affairs to say we want to do this, and we're going to do it. And then when the new ambassador was appointed, we informed her that we thought this was a high priority. And as I said, we've talked to more people in the senior former ambassadors and so on in Foreign Affairs. So yes.
So this time, what mechanism have you put in place so that to convince them?
The petitioning, by asking people to sign a petition, so that we can demonstrate that people in Australia want it. It's just not one person, but it's a community feeling that this should change. That's a dynamic that can work in Australia. Okay.
And in Zimbabwe, we understand that sanctions are not a party political thing. They affect all Zimbabweans. Just as the campaign in civil society that we are waging for peace as peace building, for Zimbabweans to unite around their interests and stop bickering, because we are bickering on nothing. And what we gain by unity is much more than us quarreling and dividing ourselves. That's the message in peace building. So this campaign will be a campaign at the grassroots with everybody. Understanding that Zimbabweans are one society, just one.
Yes.
Yes, sir. I just want to find out from your team.
Because of the violence which was so intense in the 2000 to 2005 period especially, and then the 2008 election was absolutely horrifying. So it's not a problem to understand why. The thing is, it's now 2023. Why are they still there? Especially when President Mugabe's gone long ago now. So yeah, and we also looked at that list. Of course, we have to research it clearly now. And the 5 people there, they either were deposed or fled the country, or they were the ones who deposed them. So the whole rationale for the placing of those sanctions is gone, the whole rationale. And I should have said this before, in that early part of the 2020 to 2010, 28, people in Zimbabwe were screaming for help. So there was a call from the Zimbabwean people for something like this, and we supported it. But now, there are no people in Zimbabwe calling for sanctions in the sense of a community feeling. There is some political games around this issue still, but I don't think this is a community thing at all. All I really hear is, and I see it for myself, problems. I even have problems with the internet here because of sanctions, and it's ridiculous. And it's harming the whole economy and therefore harming the prosperity of the people and their chances of going forward. It's a really bit of a crime in itself now, so we should fix it. Yes, well, as I said, I think it's very important to realise that actually holding an election where the people, everyone who's entitled to vote, who wants to vote, gets to vote, and also that they know what is the choice. There's genuine information. What is the policy here? What is the policy there? What's going to happen if I vote this way or that way? And that there's no intimidation. That is, people frightened. In the international media before the election, all I saw was articles about massive fear and so on. But what really happened here on voting day was the proper thing, a normal election that most people in the world would recognise as straightforward. And what worries me is then that afterwards the votes are counted. Anyone who wanted to say that was wrong had a chance. So it's settled, and yet there's a concerted effort by some political people to say it was completely non-credible, the whole process. So if people will not accept the votes of the people and the decision that come from that vote, we are at a rock bottom in terms of democratic practice. So I really urge everybody who's taken part in this exercise in Zimbabwe to respect the results and understand that this is how democratic politics works. There's going to be another election, and there will be another chance for people to debate and choose, again, the whole people to choose, not just a few elite people to decide what happens. So that's really the message. So I know there's lots of problems with the government, there's lots of problems with my government, but there will be another election in Australia, and there will be another election in Zimbabwe, where the people are the ones who decide, not the loudest voice or the scariest voice. So that's what I would say. Respect the result. Respect the result. Work with whatever government you've got to improve the situation. Governments themselves, it's their obligation to serve their people. And if it doesn't work out, then there's another election where it can be changed. That's the way to go. Yeah, so I understand that these statements were made, but I also understand that they're still not finalised. So I really want to, myself, collate all of the final reports of the observer missions and listen to everybody about So even if there was some incidents, were these incidents so widespread as to change the outcome of the people's will, or these are the conclusions or the judgments that the observer missions have to make. And if there was anything done wrong, there must be an accountability for that. There should be a process. If anyone was threatened or actually assaulted, bribed, all of these things, they should be dealt with properly. But I'm perceiving very, very sweeping statements in the media with very few facts behind them. So I'm hoping the observer missions get to the bottom of it and give us a report that's, I expect it will be credible, and then I think hopefully it'll be finalised.
Can I answer here as well? When we were tortured, the news was on all the international press, everywhere. People came to see where we were. Every effort was made to try and bar people from seeing us. But civil society united, and people who really were interested in justice forced the situation for us to be seen. The question I'm asking everybody who says there were lots of violence, did you see it yourself? And why didn't you report it? Where are the many pictures of all those people who were tortured in the past 6 weeks? Now I'm asking you, where is the evidence? No, I'm asking you.
Okay. No, but is it just to protect you?
No, not protecting.
No.
It's not protecting.
Yeah, I said I want to protect you.
Yeah.
As a leader.
Yeah.
It's not our duty to have an argument with you to prove a point. She has said the SADC report.
Yes.
Focus on that.
Did they show anything?
That's why I said I want to protect it.
Yeah.
Because she's mentioned the report, not
Yeah.
the media report. So your response should be specifically on the report, not to say to her, did you...
No.
Then at the end we end up saying, Newsday said they saw some political victims.
I didn't say that. I said, did they see? And if they did they report?
We don't want to answer that as the media.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Then, can I put now my position?
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
I was giving evidence to the observers. And we wrote, he has a verification unit of every story of violence that is reported. We follow up. And the problem we have with now is that we were told that, one, the 1,969 tortured people in Harare, we can't see them. Okay, those who saw them, can we talk to those? We were told no, we can't. Because, so I'm saying, it's a new situation now where we can't verify things. So the people coming from outside the country, when they go back saying these elections were different because we did not see these massive violations of people, that's their truth because they didn't see them. That answer really should go out of the country because right now the claims that there are all these injured people who can't be seen traumatizes every person who has been tortured because I can't see them to give them help. I'm speaking as a torture survivor now. If you say people have been beaten there, we should be able to go and see them and get them help. So we are not fighting anybody. We are just saying we are tired of being told that there are thousands of people that have been beaten up and tortured. And we are not being shown anybody.
Yeah.
Maybe you've seen them,
We're in a media
so we can
war.
go and have a look. We really want to look.
Yeah, so this is the media war that's taking place, and it's not over, is it? So, but we're hoping it can be finalised. The country needs to move. The people did something really good. They need to get the results for themselves from that.
And the message really from us is the liberation struggle was to liberate all Zimbabweans, all of us. Nobody who went to fight went to liberate a party or a community or a church or whatever. People went to liberate the whole country. And the whole country must finally come together and unite around that. There was an armed struggle which liberated the country, liberated everybody. That is the message that Zimbabweans must start to grapple with. And that this president, another shocking thing, is that he is worse than any president that has been in Zimbabwe. And we see the message of Ian Smith for a whiter, brighter Rhodesia. Vote Rhodesia Front in Africa. And that was the message under the Rhodesia Front. Our president Mugabe's message: I have degrees in violence. Anybody who disagrees with me, start your own party. And we started our own party, and we suffered the most horrific violence. The message today: unity, peace, harmony, love, development. Nyika inovakwa na removing us from the donor dependency may help us as torture survivors. This message and responded likewise. And really, I would like people to show me how what is happening now is worse than what has happened before. Nobody has given that evidence as well to us. Because the message this will be left behind is a UN Sustainable Goals message. And in Australia next week, there's a symposium in the city. The theme is no one, no place will be left behind towards 2030. So this president has mainstreamed us into the international with his election theme. I don't think people here understand that. So really what we are appealing for is us uniting around messages, because we need now that we have seen peace from us to come to unity. Because unless we unite, this problem in Zimbabwe will continue.
And as a Minister of Religion myself, I just want to conclude by what Senator Holland has said. I have two scriptures that I always share. Amos 3 verse 3. It says, do two people start traveling together without arranging to meet? And I think this is very important for the nation. We need to come to an understanding that to develop this nation, we need to be of one mind with unity of purpose. And then it goes on to say in Psalms 133, how wonderful it is, how pleasant for God's people to live together in harmony. It is like the precious anointing running down from Aaron's head and beard down to the collar of his robes. And then it says, it is like the dew on Mount Hermon falling on the hills of Zion. This is where the Lord has promised his blessing, life that never ends. So the moment we come together in harmony and in peace as a nation, great things begin to happen. And I think the call that we have is we need to focus on the plight of the Zimbabweans. Because by the end of the day, we are accountable not only to our current generation, but for the next 4 generations. And it is the action that we are doing today that will impact what happens in the next 4 generations. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you for the question from one girl for the whole press conference.
Good on you.
Thank you very much for that question.